DEFCON 3, I'm KT McFarland. ISIS made significant gains in Syria and then Iraq within the last year. But the terror group now seems to be on the defensive as it tries to hold its ground against the U.S. and coalition forces. Here to weigh in is Stratfor's Kamran Bokhari. Kamran, tell me, 2014 was the year that we saw ISIS gains. Will 2015 be the year we see their reversals?
KD, I think you're right. We will see reversal, and I think that reversal is already in play. If you notice that ISIS, for a long time, basically hit a speed breaker, and it's not been able to move as fast as we saw it back in the summer. In fact, a lot of ground has been taken from it in Iraq, and as time goes by, as the Iraqi political system becomes more coherent, and the cooperation with allied forces, both U.S. Western and regional, increases, we'll see ISIS being rolled out of Iraq slowly.
All right, well, that's Iraq. What would happen then in Syria, where ISIS has made gains against the Assad government? Will that coalition hold to help forces in Syria, or what happens there?
There's a complete, stark contrast between the two countries. In Syria, as you know, there isn't a political system around which Syrian Sunnis can be brought in and divided or separated from ISIS. And mind you, ISIS is not the only jihadist group in Syria. We have Al-Qaeda's Syrian arm, Jabhat al-Nusra, and frankly speaking, a lot of those so-called moderate mainstream rebel groups are also of one Salafist jihadist persuasion or another. So it's going to be very difficult to uproot it from Syria because it's just very different. Even though it's next door, the ground realities are very, very different from Iraq.
Okay, well, if that happens then, and the fighting in Iraq where coalition U.S. forces working with the Iraqi government make gains and maybe even retake the Iraqi city of Mosul, can ISIS survive if it's just in Syria?
I think it can. Remember that ISIS or IS or Daesh, as the Arabs call it, it is rooted in Syria now. It started off in Iraq. It rooted itself in Syria in the wake of the civil war there, and then returned this year in June to Iraq. And therefore, I think that it's using the strategic depth in Syria to project power outside. Now, its outside power projection capability may be degraded sufficiently, but that's very different from uprooting it from within Syria, given the conditions, given the civil war, and the factional fighting there.
Kamran, let me ask you about Iran's role in all of this. The United States is helping the Iraqi government. We have forces there that are training forces. We have a coalition of moderate Sunni states. But on the other hand, Iran, Iraq's neighbor, Iran, Shiite Iran, has forces in Iraq as well, fighting against ISIS. Are we working with Iran? Is Iran working for the same goals we are? What's the role of all of the Iranian fighters that are in the region?
KT, this is one of those things that most people don't want to talk about, but the reality is that, yes, the United States is quietly cooperating with Iran as far as the anti-IS effort is concerned in Iraq. It's a different story altogether in Syria, but in Iraq, there is cooperation. The Iranians don't want to telegraph it. The Americans don't want to telegraph it, but there's just no way for both countries to be helping the same actor, i.e. Shiite-dominated Baghdad and the Kurdish government in the north, without working with one another. And this is something we predicted at Stratfor way back when ISIS emerged in Iraq, and we said that there will be quiet cooperation. In fact, there will be an effort by both Washington and Tehran to say, no, we're not cooperating, but behind the scenes there is cooperation.
The many layers of the Middle East. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Kamran Bokhari of Stratfor. For this and other developing stories, stay tuned to FoxNews.com. I'm KT McFarland. Thanks for watching DEFCON 3.